Torrential rain pounds against her kitchen window as she watches 8 leather-clad bikers huddle under her rickety porch roof. Their massive Harleys gleam in the lightning flashes. At 67, Dorothy has seen enough trouble to last 3 lifetimes. Her hands shake as she peers through the curtains. These aren't neighborhood boys. These are grown men, big men, dangerous-looking men with tattoos covering their arms and patches on their jackets she can't quite read from inside. But something about their desperate eyes cuts through her fear. The way they're protecting the oldest one, the way they keep looking toward her door like it's their only hope. Outside, the storm is getting worse. Power lines are sparking. Trees are bending until they're ready to snap. But what Dorothy doesn't know is that the man shivering on her porch has the power to transform not just her life, but her entire neighborhood forever. Every morning brought the same impossible choice for Dorothy Washington. The alarm cuts through the darkness at 4:30 a.m. sharp. Dorothy reaches over to silence it, her arthritis making even that simple movement painful. On her nightstand sits a stack of bills with angry red stamps. Final notice. Past due. Service will be disconnected. She's been choosing between heat and groceries for 3 months now. This morning, like every morning, heat loses. Dorothy pulls on her coat in the cold apartment, the same winter coat from 1998, held together with duct tape along the seams. She checks the thermostat, 52 degrees, cold enough to see her breath but warm enough to survive another day. In the kitchen, she opens the refrigerator. 1 can of soup, a sleeve of crackers, half a gallon of milk that expires today. She closes the door without taking anything. "Save it for dinner," she whispers to herself. You've got work to get to. But first, the walk. 2 miles to the elementary school where she works as a custodian. 2 miles because the bus costs $2.50 each way, and that's $5 she can put toward her granddaughter's college fund instead. Dorothy steps outside into the pre-dawn darkness of East Cleveland. Her knees protest every step, but she hums an old gospel hymn anyway. "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine." Her voice echoes off the empty streets. She passes the corner where Malik waits for his school bus. The 15-year-old shouldn't be out this early, but his mom works the night shift at the hospital. Dorothy waves. "Morning, baby. You eat something?" Malik shrugs. "Not hungry." Dorothy knows that shrug. She's worn it herself plenty of times. Without saying another word, she pulls the crackers from her coat pocket. "Take these. A growing boy needs to eat." "Miss Dorothy, I can't take your food." "Child, I got plenty." The lie comes easy. It's the same lie she's been telling for years. The same lie that keeps the neighborhood children fed while she goes without. This is Dorothy's world. A world where she empties her emergency fund to buy school lunch credits for kids whose parents can't afford them. Where she patches bicycle tires with her own money and never asks for payment. Where she tutors homework on her front porch every evening, helping children read the books she can't afford to buy. The mason jar on her kitchen counter tells the story. Emergency fund written in her careful handwriting. Inside, $23.47 in nickels and dimes. 3 months of saving every spare penny. At the school, Dorothy unlocks the janitor's closet. Her domain. Her kingdom of mops and cleaning supplies. She's worked here for 8 years, ever since her husband passed. The pay is minimum wage, but it's steady. And steady matters when you're 67 years old and nobody wants to hire you for anything better. Principal Martinez stops by around lunchtime. "Dorothy, you're doing great work as always. The kids love you. They do love her." She knows their names, asks about their families, slips them granola bars when she thinks they're hungry. But love doesn't pay the electric bill. After school, Dorothy walks another mile to her second job. The Sunset Manor nursing home needs part-time help, and Dorothy's gentle hands are perfect for feeding residents who can't feed themselves. The work is hard, but the elderly residents remind her of her own mother. They deserve dignity. They deserve care. Mrs. Lane holds Dorothy's hand during dinner. "You're an angel, Dorothy." Dorothy smiles. "Just doing what needs doing, sweetheart." At 8 p.m., Dorothy finally heads home. Her feet are screaming. Her back aches from mopping floors and lifting residents. But she stops at the corner store anyway. "Evening, Dorothy," says Ahmed behind the counter. The usual. Just a can of soup tonight. She counts out exact change. Pennies and nickels. Ahmed pretends not to notice. Back home, Dorothy sits at her small kitchen table. 1 can of soup split between tonight and tomorrow. Crackers on the side. Tea instead of coffee because coffee costs more. On the wall hangs her most treasured possession, her late husband's flag from his military service, folded perfectly in a triangle case. Robert served 2 tours overseas before coming home to build a life with Dorothy. They never had much money, but they had each other. They had purpose. Family takes care of family, Robert used to say, and sometimes family is whoever needs you most. Dorothy lives by those words. When teenage Malik's mother got sick and couldn't work, Dorothy emptied her emergency fund to keep him in school. When Mrs. Patterson's porch steps broke, Dorothy paid for the wood and spent her weekend hammering boards. When the new immigrant family moved in next door, Dorothy helped them fill out paperwork and translate at the grocery store. The neighborhood knows Grammy Dot. They know she'll babysit for free when parents work late. They know she'll share her last can of soup if someone's hungrier than she is. They know her door is always open to anyone who needs help. Some folks say she's too trusting, too giving, but Dorothy believes what her mama taught her. If we don't take care of each other, who will? Outside, the wind is picking up. Dorothy checks the weather on her old radio, static crackling through the speaker. Severe thunderstorm warning, possible tornadoes. She double-checks her windows and says her evening prayers. Lord, keep everyone safe tonight, and if you got any miracles lying around, I could surely use one. But Dorothy Washington has no idea that her miracle is already on its way. 8 motorcycles cutting through the darkness, heading straight for her street. The storm that changed everything started with a single raindrop on Dorothy's kitchen window. October 15th, 6:47 p.m. Dorothy notices the dark clouds gathering as she walks home from Sunset Manor. Her arthritis is acting up, which always means bad weather coming. The old radio in her kitchen had mentioned storms, but the static made it hard to hear the details. She quickens her pace as much as her 67-year-old legs allow. 2 blocks to go. The first drops hit the pavement just as she reaches Maple Street. Big, heavy drops that splatter like coins on the sidewalk. Dorothy pulls her thin coat tighter. This isn't going to be a gentle autumn shower. By the time she reaches her front porch, the wind is picking up. The old oak tree in her yard creaks ominously. Dorothy fumbles with her keys, glancing at the sky. Those clouds look angry, black and swirling like they're planning something terrible. Inside, she flips on the local news. The weatherman's voice crackles through her old television. Severe thunderstorm warning in effect until midnight. Possible tornado activity. Residents should seek shelter immediately if... The power flickers. Dorothy's heart skips. She can't afford to lose power. Not with the electric bill already past due. Thunder crashes overhead, rattling every window in the house. Dorothy moves to her living room window and peers out at the street. Mrs. Patterson's porch light is swaying like a pendulum. The wind is howling now, bending the street lights at impossible angles. That's when she hears them. The rumble starts low, almost like more thunder, but thunder doesn't keep going. Thunder doesn't get louder and more rhythmic. This sound has purpose. This sound is coming her way. Dorothy presses her face to the glass. Through the rain, she sees headlights cutting through the darkness. Not car headlights. These are different. Lower. More aggressive. 8 motorcycles roar down Maple Street, their riders hunched against the sideways rain. Harley-Davidsons from the sound of them. Big bikes. Expensive bikes. Not the kind you see in this neighborhood. Dorothy's pulse quickens. She's lived in East Cleveland long enough to know that nothing good happens when strangers roll through after dark, especially strangers on motorcycles. The bikes slow as they approach her house. Dorothy's mouth goes dry. Of all the streets in Cleveland, why are they choosing hers? The lead rider points toward Dorothy's house, the only house on the block with a covered porch, the only shelter for miles that could protect 8 motorcycles from the storm. One by one, the bikes pull into her driveway, their engines cut out, leaving only the sound of wind and rain. Dorothy watches 8 figures dismount, all wearing black leather, all soaked to the bone. She can see them clearly now under her porch light. The leader is tall with a gray beard, his leather vest dripping water. There's a younger man helping an older rider who's clearly struggling. Two others are immediately checking their bikes for damage, moving with military precision. Dorothy notices one rider limping as he climbs off his bike. Another is speaking into what looks like a walkie-talkie, coordinating something. These aren't random troublemakers. They're organized. But organized for what? The storm intensifies. A transformer explodes 2 blocks away, sending sparks into the night sky. The power in Dorothy's house flickers again, then goes out completely. Emergency sirens wail in the distance. Through her window, Dorothy sees the oldest biker stumble. He grabs his chest, his face contorting in pain. The others rush to his side, their voices urgent but too far away to hear over the wind. Dorothy's nursing training kicks in. She recognizes the signs: chest pain, pale complexion, difficulty breathing. This man is having a cardiac event. The lead rider looks desperately toward Dorothy's house. Their eyes meet through the glass. In that moment, Dorothy sees something she wasn't expecting. Not anger or menace, but desperation. Pure human desperation. A tree branch crashes onto the neighbor's car. Power lines are sparking across the street. The temperature is dropping fast, and these men are soaked through. 8 of them. Big men. Strangers. In her neighborhood after dark. Every instinct tells Dorothy to stay inside, lock the doors, wait for them to leave. But the old man isn't getting better. He's leaning heavily on the others, and they're looking around frantically. The nearest hospital is 15 minutes away on a good day. In this storm, with roads flooding and power lines down, it might as well be on the moon. Dorothy's hand hovers over her phone. Call 911. In this weather, with emergency services already stretched thin, help could be hours away. Lightning strikes the transformer at the end of the street. The entire block plunges into darkness. In that moment of brilliant white light, Dorothy sees the truth written on 8 faces. These men aren't here to cause trouble. They're in trouble. Someone's grandfather is dying on her porch, and she's the only one who can help. "Lord, help me," Dorothy whispers, reaching for her door handle. "They're somebody's sons." What happened in the next 20 minutes would test everything Dorothy believed about human nature. Dorothy throws open her front door, rain immediately soaking her face. "Y'all get in here before you catch your death!" The 8 bikers freeze. They stare at this tiny elderly woman standing in her doorway, arms spread wide like she's welcoming family instead of strangers. "Ma'am, we don't want to impose," the leader shouts over the wind. "I don't care what you look like," Dorothy shouts back. "Hypothermia don't discriminate. Get inside." The leader looks at his men, then at Dorothy's determined face. He nods once. "You heard the lady." One by one, 8 massive figures file through Dorothy's tiny doorway. Water drips from their leather jackets onto her worn carpet. The small living room suddenly feels microscopic, filled with the smell of rain and leather and desperate gratitude. Dorothy moves with practiced efficiency. She spent years caring for people at the nursing home. This is just a bigger emergency. "Tank, help me get these towels," she calls over her shoulder, not even realizing she's using their road names she's overheard. From her bedroom closet, she pulls every towel she owns. 7 towels for 8 men. She gives them her last clean sheet. "Sit anywhere you can find space," she instructs, repositioning her space heater to face the group. "We need to get you all dry before you catch pneumonia." The youngest biker, called Phoenix by the others, tries to hand her money. "Ma'am, for the trouble, put that away," Dorothy says firmly. "You think I'm running a hotel here? This is what neighbors do." But her attention quickly shifts to the oldest man they call Pops. He's sitting heavily in her recliner, his face pale and sweaty despite the cold. His breathing is shallow and rapid. Dorothy's nursing instincts take over. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Frank," he manages. "Frank Morrison." "Frank, I'm Dorothy. I work at a nursing home. I'm going to check you over, okay?" She kneels beside the recliner, her arthritic knees protesting. Frank's pulse is rapid and irregular. His skin is clammy. Classic signs of cardiac distress. "We need to call 911, she announces. "Roads are flooded," says the leader. "Ambulance can't get through. We tried." Dorothy's mind races. Her bedroom. It's the warmest, quietest room in the house. "Help me get him to my bedroom. Carefully now." 4 bikers lift Frank like he weighs nothing, following Dorothy down the narrow hallway. They lower him onto her bed with surprising gentleness. Tank, bring my purse from the kitchen. There's aspirin in there. Dorothy is all business now. Phoenix, I need you to elevate his feet. Use those pillows. She finds her blood pressure cuff, a remnant from her nurse's aid training. Frank's readings confirm her fears. Frank, honey, when did this start? About an hour ago, he gasps. Thought it was just the cold. Dorothy administers aspirin, monitors his pulse, adjusts his position for better circulation. The other bikers watch silently, their tough exteriors cracking with obvious concern. Pop's trained most of us, one whispers to another. Taught us about honor, about riding for something bigger than ourselves. He's been riding longer than I've been alive, adds another. We don't leave anyone behind, the leader says quietly. Dorothy catches these fragments as she works. These aren't just random men thrown together. They're family, a brotherhood. Thunder crashes overhead. The storm shows no signs of stopping. Y'all must be starving, Dorothy realizes. And cold. She disappears into her kitchen, returning with her last can of soup and a sleeve of crackers. 8 hungry men staring at enough food for maybe 2 people. Dorothy heats the soup on her gas stove, the only appliance still working without power. She arranges the crackers on her good plate, the one she uses for special occasions. She makes instant coffee with bottled water, serving it in mismatched mugs. It ain't much, but it's warm. The men look at each other uncertainly. They can see this is all she has. Ma'am, we can't take your food, says Tank. Child, when's the last time any of y'all ate? Their silence answers the question. Then you eat. Period. As Dorothy serves the food, she notices something that makes her pause. Mixed among the motorcycle club patches on their leather vests are military service pins. Purple Hearts, Bronze Stars, combat infantry badges. These men are veterans. The leader catches her looking. Marines mostly, some Army. We ride together to raise money for veteran causes. My husband was in the Army, Dorothy says softly. 2 tours. The room grows quiet except for the storm outside. What was his name? Asks Frank from the bedroom. Robert Washington, good man, better than I deserved. They all are, Frank says. The good ones die too young. For the next hour, Dorothy's house becomes a shelter in more ways than one. She tends to Frank, whose condition slowly stabilizes with rest and warmth. She listens to stories about grandchildren from Tank. She learns that Phoenix is actually studying to be a nurse. She discovers that the leader, who finally introduces himself as James, lost his own mother last year. She would have done exactly what you're doing, James tells Dorothy. Open her door to strangers because it was the right thing to do. The tornado sirens wail. Everyone huddles in Dorothy's narrow hallway, the safest spot in the house. Frank is stable enough to be moved, and Dorothy keeps checking his pulse throughout the ordeal. Where y'all from? Dorothy asks during a lull in the wind. All over, says James. We were heading back from a charity ride in Pittsburgh, raised money for homeless veterans. How much do you raise? The men exchange glances. A couple million, James says quietly. Dorothy's eyes widened. These aren't small-time charity riders. This is serious money for serious causes. Gradually, the wind dies down. The power flickers back on. Emergency vehicles can be heard moving through the streets again. Roads should be passable now, James announces after checking his phone. The men begin gathering their things. Frank is steady on his feet, color returning to his cheeks. Dorothy's soup and warm shelter may have saved his life. Ma'am, James says as they prepare to leave, you saved our friend tonight. Let us give you something for your kindness. But Dorothy Washington has spent her whole life taking care of people. She's never been one to accept payment for doing what's right. And she's about to prove it one more time. The leader's final gesture would plant a seed that would bloom into something extraordinary. As the bikers prepare to leave, James approaches Dorothy with obvious respect. His leather wallet is thick with cash, more cash than Dorothy has seen in years. Ma'am, you saved Frank's life tonight. Let us give you something for your kindness. Dorothy holds up her hand like a stop sign. I didn't do anything that anyone else wouldn't do. Dorothy, please. James pulls out a thick roll of bills. This isn't charity. This is gratitude. Child, if I took money for helping folks, I'd be in the wrong business. Dorothy's voice is firm but gentle. The good Lord put y'all on my porch for a reason. Wasn't so I could profit from it. Through her living room window, Dorothy notices movement. Mrs. Patterson from next door is peeking through her curtains. Other neighbors are watching too. Dorothy can see the worry in their faces, the judgment forming. 8 big men with motorcycles. In Dorothy's house. After dark. She knows what they're thinking. James persists. At least let us pay for the food, the electricity you used. Keep your money, Dorothy says, physically placing her hand over his wallet. Spend it on your families. Spend it on those homeless veterans you mentioned. Tank speaks up. Ma'am, we raised $2.3 million this weekend. We can afford to thank you properly. Dorothy's eyes widen at the figure, but her resolve doesn't waver. Then you take that money and help people who need it more than I do. The men exchange glances. They've met generous people before, but nothing like this. Dorothy Washington just fed them her last can of soup and refuses to take a penny. James tries one more approach. When Dorothy turns away, he places $500 on her kitchen table. More money than Dorothy sees in 2 months. She notices immediately. Without a word, Dorothy picks up the bills and walks to James. She places them directly in his hand and folds his fingers around them. My mama taught me that kindness ain't for sale, she says quietly. Y'all get home safe to your people. Frank, now steady on his feet, approaches Dorothy. You're an angel, Miss Dorothy. I won't forget this night. Just take care of that ticker, Dorothy replies, patting his arm. The other bikers line up to thank her personally. Each one shakes her hand. These aren't the dangerous strangers she feared 2 hours ago. These are somebody's sons, somebody's fathers. Tank pulls a small prayer card from his wallet. St. Christopher, patron saint of travelers. He presses it into Dorothy's hand, for keeping us safe. As they file out, James pauses at the door. He reaches into his vest pocket and pulls out a business card. Expensive cardstock, embossed lettering. At least take this, he insists. If you ever need anything at all, you call that number. Dorothy looks at the card. Phoenix Industries, in elegant script. A phone number she doesn't recognize. I don't need anything. Dorothy starts to protest. Promise me you'll keep it, James says, his tone serious now. Promise me. Something in his voice makes Dorothy nod. I'll keep it. Thank you, James says, for everything. Outside, Dorothy can hear the motorcycle starting up. 8 engines roar to life. She watches from her doorway as they pull out of her driveway, their headlights cutting through the darkness. Mrs. Patterson appears at her fence. Dorothy, were you all right? I saw all the motorcycles and got worried. Just some folks caught in the storm, Dorothy replies, keeping their business private. You sure they didn't take anything? These biker types can be trouble. Dorothy thinks about the money they tried to force on her, the genuine gratitude in their eyes. No trouble, Mrs. Patterson. No trouble at all. But as Dorothy closes her door, she notices the business card in her hand. She tucks it into her Bible, her most treasured possession. Tomorrow she'll go back to her normal routine. 4:30 a.m. alarm, double shifts, bills on the nightstand. But something has changed tonight. Outside, neighbors are still watching from their windows. Dorothy can feel their eyes on her house. She knows what they're thinking. She'll deal with that tomorrow. Tonight she just saved a man's life, because that's who Dorothy Washington is. Over the next few days, strange things began happening that Dorothy couldn't quite explain. Day 1 after the storm, Dorothy returns to work at the elementary school. Her supervisor, Mrs. Lane, notices something different. Dorothy, you seem more upbeat today. That gospel humming is extra cheerful. Dorothy smiles, mopping the hallway. Just grateful, I suppose. The storm could have been worse. She doesn't mention the 8 strangers who spent the night in her living room. Some things are private, but the whispers have already started. At lunch, janitor Mike pulls Dorothy aside. Hey, my neighbor on Maple Street said she saw motorcycles at your place during the storm. Is everything okay? Dorothy keeps mopping. Just folks caught in bad weather. 8 motorcycles, Dorothy. That's a lot of folks. She can hear the concern in his voice, the suspicion. After work, Dorothy stops at Ahmed's corner store. The conversation dies when she walks in. 3 neighborhood women turn to stare. Mrs. Rodriguez whispers something to Mrs. Johnson. Both look at Dorothy with new eyes. Evening, Dorothy, Ahmed says carefully. Heard you had some excitement during the storm. Nothing exciting about helping people, Dorothy replies, buying her usual can of soup. But she notices Ahmed counting her change twice, like he's wondering where she really got the money. That evening, Dorothy finally examines the business card properly. Phoenix Industries, in elegant script. corporate headquarters address in a part of town she's never been to. She asks her granddaughter to look it up online. "Grandma, this is weird. The website is super basic. Just says private investment and community development. The CEO is listed as J. Phoenix, but there's no photo. What kind of business don't show their boss? The kind with serious money, Grandma. Look at this. They're involved in veteran support initiatives across 5 states. Dorothy stares at the screen. These men weren't just riding for fun, they were riding for a cause. Over the next week, strange coincidences pile up. The local veterans hospital receives an anonymous donation. The community center gets surprise funding for senior programs. The food bank finds a mysterious shipment of supplies on their loading dock. Dorothy notices more motorcycles on the roads than usual. Not causing trouble, just there, like they're watching over the neighborhood. Mrs. Patterson stops by with fresh cookies and pointed questions. "Dorothy, people are talking, saying you might be mixed up with the wrong crowd." "What people?" "Church people, school people, they're worried." Dorothy sets down her tea. "Worried about what?" "About you letting strangers into your house. About what kind of people ride motorcycles in storms." "They were good people, Mrs. Patterson." "How do you know?" "Dorothy, you're too trusting. What if they come back?" That night, Dorothy lies in bed holding the business card. Part of her expects to never hear from those men again. That's how it usually goes when she helps people. They say thank you and disappear back into their lives. But something feels different this time. Something about the way James insisted she keep the card. Something about the expensive paper and the mysterious company. Dorothy tucks the card back into her Bible and says her prayers. She has no idea that 8 men in leather jackets are planning something that will change her life forever. The truth about that stormy night was about to arrive at Dorothy's front door. Day 8 after the storm, Saturday morning, October 23rd. Dorothy is tending her small garden, pulling weeds from around her tomato plants. The October sun feels good on her back. For a moment, she forgets about the whispers, the worried looks, the way conversations stop when she enters a room. Then she hears it. That rumble, deep and rhythmic. Not thunder this time, but engines, lots of them. Dorothy straightens up, her arthritic back protesting. Down the street, she sees a single motorcycle turning onto Maple Street. Then 5 more. Then 20. Then more than she can count. Her hands start shaking as motorcycles line her entire street. Neighbors peek from windows. Children point from porches. Mrs. Patterson comes out on her lawn, cell phone already in hand, probably calling the police. The sound is deafening. Then, in perfect unison, it stops. 100 bikers dismount simultaneously. Dorothy's mouth goes dry. She recognizes the 8 from that night, but now they're accompanied by an army. All wearing similar leather vests, all moving with military precision, all looking directly at her house. "Lord, what have I gotten myself into?" Dorothy whispers. Her mind races through possibilities. Revenge for something she doesn't understand. Gang business she accidentally witnessed. Maybe they think she knows something she doesn't. She considers running inside, locking the door, calling for help. But it's too late for that now. The leader from that night walks up her driveway. But now Dorothy notices details she missed before. His leather jacket isn't just any jacket. It's expensive, with official patches she can see clearly in daylight. Military bearing is more pronounced. Other bikers treated him with obvious respect. Professional bodyguards flanking him. This isn't just some motorcycle club leader. This is someone important. "Miss Dorothy," he says, his voice carrying easily across the suddenly silent street. "I need to properly introduce myself." Dorothy's neighbors are gathering now. Mrs. Patterson, Mike from across the street, the Johnson family, Malik and his mother, all watching, all waiting to see what trouble Dorothy has brought to their quiet neighborhood. "My name is James Phoenix." The name sounds familiar, but Dorothy can't place it. "Nice to meet you proper, Mr. Phoenix. You have my card, Phoenix Industries. But what you don't know is what that company really does." Dorothy glances around at her neighbors. She can see the fear in their eyes. 100 motorcycles, military precision, a leader who speaks like he's used to being obeyed. "Mr. Phoenix, I appreciate you stopping by, but Miss Dorothy," James interrupts gently. "I'm not just a successful businessman. Phoenix Industries has donated over $50 million to veteran causes in the past 5 years. The crowd murmurs. $50 million? From a motorcycle club? We're not just a riding club, James continues, his voice carrying to every neighbor within earshot. We're all veterans. Marine Corps, Army, Navy, Air Force. We ride together to raise money and awareness for veteran causes. Dorothy's eyes widened. Veterans. Like her, Robert. That storm caught us returning from a 3-state charity ride that raised $2.3 million for homeless veterans. We were exhausted, soaked, and Frank was having a medical emergency when we found your porch. Mrs. Patterson lowers her phone. Malik's mother steps closer to hear better. You mean, Dorothy's voice is barely a whisper, y'all are the good guys? James smiles. Thanks to you, we're alive, guys. The revelation hits the crowd like a wave. These aren't dangerous criminals. These are heroes, veterans who ride for charity, men who serve their community, and Dorothy helped them when they needed it most. Miss Dorothy, James continues, in 30 years of military service and 15 years running Phoenix Industries, I've never encountered someone who would risk their safety, spend their last resources, and refuse payment to help complete strangers. Dorothy feels tears starting. Mr. Phoenix, I just did what anyone would do. No, James says firmly. You did what heroes do, and we've been looking for someone exactly like you. The crowd is completely silent now. Even the children have stopped moving. We've spent the past week researching you, Miss Dorothy. Your volunteer work at the community kitchen, your double jobs to support your granddaughter's education, your reputation in this neighborhood as someone who helps everyone, your financial struggles despite your generosity. Dorothy's cheeks burn with embarrassment. Her private struggles, exposed in front of everyone. We've been looking for someone to run our new community outreach center, James announces. Someone who understands what it means to serve others without expecting anything in return. The neighbors exchange glances. Community outreach center? Here? Mr. Phoenix, Dorothy stammers. I'm just a janitor and part-time nurse's aide. I don't know anything about running centers. You fed 8 strangers your last can of soup, James replies. You opened your home to people who could have been dangerous. You saved a man's life and refused payment. Miss Dorothy, you don't need to learn how to serve people. You need to learn how to let people serve you. Mrs. Patterson's hand goes to her mouth. Mrs. Johnson starts crying. These neighbors who've been whispering about Dorothy's poor judgment are suddenly seeing the truth. Dorothy Washington isn't the problem in their neighborhood. She's the solution. We want to offer you a position, James says. $75,000 a year to coordinate community programs, full health care benefits, housing allowance, and the budget to hire and train other community workers. Dorothy's knees almost give out. More money than she's ever dreamed of, to help people, to serve her community. This can't be real, she whispers. Miss Dorothy, James says, his voice carrying across the silent street. You changed our lives that night. Now we want to change yours. And through you, we want to change this whole community. What Dorothy thought was a simple act of kindness to strangers was actually rescuing some of the most powerful veteran advocates in the country. Her refusal of payment wasn't just moral, it was the exact test that proved she was the person they'd been searching for. But the job offer was just the beginning of what James Phoenix had planned. Dorothy's hesitation is written all over her face. Mr. Phoenix, this is too much. I can't accept charity. This isn't charity, Miss Dorothy, James replies, his voice carrying across the silent street. This is the smartest business decision I've ever made. Let me show you what we're really offering. James pulls out architectural blueprints from his motorcycle's saddlebag. He spreads them across Dorothy's small porch table as neighbors crane their necks to see. Community center blueprint for this neighborhood, he announces. Medical clinic with free basic services, job training programs, after-school tutoring center, senior services coordination. Dorothy's eyes widen as she studies the plans. The building is massive, professional, more resources than this neighborhood has ever seen. You wouldn't just have a job, Dorothy. You'd be the director of community impact. You'd decide how we spend our resources to help the most people. Mrs. Patterson steps closer, her earlier suspicions forgotten. Did he say free medical clinic? Yes, ma'am, James confirms. And job training programs for anyone who needs them. Other bikers step forward, removing their helmets. Suddenly they look less intimidating and more like professionals. "This is Dr. Marcus Williams," James says, introducing a tall African-American man, former Navy trauma specialist. "He'll run the medical clinic." "Tank?" Dorothy asks, recognizing him. Dr. Williams smiles. "Tank was my road name, but I've been treating veterans for 15 years. And this is Sarah Lane, former Navy logistics coordinator. She'll handle job placement and training programs." Dorothy shakes her head in amazement. "Y'all got real jobs, real careers. This is Reverend Michael Torres, chaplain and community organizer. He'll coordinate with local churches and community groups." Malik's mother speaks up from the crowd. "Reverend, you're a preacher?" Reverend Torres nods. 20 years in the Army, 10 years in ministry. We ride together because we serve together." Dorothy's questions come rapid fire. "But why me? Why this neighborhood?" "Because you prove that real change starts with real caring," James explains. "We've tried top-down programs before. They fail because they don't have heart. You have more heart than anyone we've ever met." James continues, unveiling the complete vision. "Phoenix Industries has been planning community intervention programs in underserved areas. Your neighborhood was selected after extensive research, but we needed someone local who understood the real needs. Someone who already has the community's trust," adds Dr. Williams. Dorothy looks around at her neighbors, Mrs. Patterson, who brings her cookies, Malik, who calls her Grammy Dot, Mrs. Johnson, who asks her to translate documents. These are her people. "The personal benefits are substantial," James continues. "Your granddaughter's college tuition will be fully covered, plus graduate school if she chooses. Your housing situation will be resolved immediately with a moving allowance and first year's rent paid in advance." Dorothy gasps. "My granddaughter's education? Full scholarship. We've already contacted her school." "Health insurance starts immediately," Sarah adds. "Comprehensive coverage including dental and vision. Company vehicle for community work," Reverend Torres mentions. "Can't coordinate programs if you can't get around." Dorothy's hands shake as the magnitude hits her. How much would I be managing?" $500,000 annually for community programs," James states, "plus authority to hire 12 full-time positions." The crowd murmurs, $500,000 in their neighborhood. "Construction begins in 30 days, James continues. "You'll start with 6 weeks of paid training at our headquarters. Leadership development, program management, community organization." Dorothy's voice cracks. "I've never managed more than my own checkbook." "You've been managing this entire community's well-being for years," Dr. Williams replies. "Now you'll have resources to match your heart." James addresses the growing crowd of neighbors directly. "Miss Dorothy isn't the only hero on this street. We want to hire locally, train locally, and invest locally. Anyone interested in construction jobs, administrative work, or program coordination should talk to Dorothy this week." Malik raises his hand. "Construction jobs? Real construction jobs?" 40-hour weeks, full benefits, apprenticeship programs," Sarah confirms. Suddenly, Phoenix Industries trucks appear at the end of the street. Workers begin unloading groceries, medical supplies, and legal aid materials. "Immediate assistance while we build the permanent center," James explains. "Free groceries for every household on this block. Mobile medical clinic for health screenings, legal team to help with housing issues, immigration paperwork, anything you need." Mrs. Patterson wipes her eyes. "Free groceries? For everyone?" "Everyone," Dr. Williams confirms. Dorothy's voice shakes with emotion. "I don't know what I did to deserve this blessing, but I promise y'all, every penny will go to helping folks who need it most." The crowd erupts in cheers and tears. Children are asking to touch the motorcycles. Adults are crying with joy and disbelief. James pulls out official documents. "Signing ceremony Monday morning at our headquarters. Background check formalities, though we know you'll pass with flying colors. First community meeting scheduled for next week," Sarah adds, "to hear what programs you want most. Training starts the following Monday," Reverend Torres concludes. James hands Dorothy keys to a reliable Honda Civic. "You can't coordinate community programs if you can't get around the community." Dorothy stares at the keys, her first car in 5 years. Frank, the older biker whose life she saved, approaches with obvious emotion. "Miss Dorothy, you didn't just save my life that night. You reminded us what we're fighting for. This isn't just business, it's personal." Neighbor testimonials start flowing. Malik steps forward. Miss Dorothy bought my school lunches when Mom was sick. Mrs. Patterson. She fixed my porch steps and wouldn't take a dime. The store owner. She helps translate for customers who don't speak English. This is exactly why we chose you, James says. You've already been doing this job. Now you'll get paid for it. Dorothy's moment of clarity comes like sunrise. Mr. Phoenix, if this means I can help more people the way y'all helped me, then yes, I'll do it. 100 bikers cheer. Neighbors cry happy tears. Children dance in the street. Dorothy's small act of kindness has transformed into a community celebration that will change hundreds of lives. 6 months later, Dorothy's neighborhood was unrecognizable. The abandoned lot where kids used to play in broken glass now houses a gleaming community center. Solar panels catch the morning sun. Wide glass doors welcome families streaming in for programs. The sign reads, Dorothy Washington Community Impact Center in gold letters. Dorothy herself is transformed. Gone are the worn janitor's uniforms and duct-taped coats. She wears professional business attire, her head held high as she greets community members by name. Her reliable Honda has been upgraded to a Phoenix Industries van equipped to transport seniors to medical appointments. The numbers tell an incredible story. 47 local residents now have full-time jobs. Construction workers who built the center stayed on as maintenance staff. Former unemployment recipients now run the after-school programs. Mrs. Rodriguez, who used to struggle with English, manages the translation services department. 156 children are enrolled in after-school programs. Malik graduated high school with honors and starts college next fall on a Phoenix Industries scholarship. His mother, formerly stressed about his future, now coordinates the youth mentorship program. 89 seniors receive regular health screenings at the medical clinic. Mrs. Patterson discovered her diabetes early thanks to free blood sugar testing. Frank Morrison, the biker whose life Dorothy saved, volunteers twice a week checking blood pressure for elderly residents. 23 families have moved from shelters to stable housing through the Housing Assistance Program. Dorothy personally helped each family navigate the paperwork, using skills she learned during her 6-week training. Media coverage has been overwhelming. The local news station did a 3-part series, Community Transformation Inspired by Act of Kindness. Channel 8's morning show featured Dorothy explaining how one can of soup changed hundreds of lives. The regional newspaper ran a front-page story, how one woman's compassion sparked million-dollar investment. The article included before and after photos that went viral on social media. National Veteran Magazine published a cover story, Phoenix Industries' most successful community partnership. Dorothy appeared on the cover alongside James Phoenix, both smiling in front of the community center. Dorothy's daily routine reflects her transformation. 7 a.m., arriving at the center in professional clothes, greeting staff members who used to be neighbors struggling to find work. Morning meetings with program coordinators discussing expansion plans. Dorothy leads these meetings with confidence she never knew she possessed. Lunch meetings with city officials and other community leaders. The mayor now asks Dorothy's opinion on citywide programs. Her success model is being studied for replication. Afternoon. Direct interaction with community members. Dorothy still knows everyone's name, still asks about their families, still gives out hugs freely. Evening. Planning sessions for new initiatives. The center now operates from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., serving over 400 families. Community testimonials pour in daily. Malik, now in college. Miss Dorothy's tutoring program didn't just help me get scholarships. It showed me I was worth investing in. Mrs. Patterson. The senior health clinic caught my diabetes before it got dangerous. Miss Dorothy saved my life just like she saved those bikers. Local mother Maria Santos. The job training program got me off welfare and into a career I love. My children see me working with purpose now. James Washington, a former drug dealer. Miss Dorothy gave me a construction job and a second chance. I've been clean for 6 months and got my kids back. The ripple effects extend far beyond the neighborhood. Phoenix Industries has opened 4 additional community centers in other cities, each following Dorothy's model of relationship-driven development. Dorothy travels monthly to consult with other communities seeking similar transformation. Her speaking fees go directly back into local programs. Harvard Business School created a case study called Dorothy's Way: Relationship-Driven Community Development. Students study her approach in graduate courses. Congressional hearings on community-based intervention programs featured Dorothy's testimony about what works versus what doesn't. The motorcycle club's continued involvement has deepened. Their annual charity ride now specifically benefits Dorothy's programs, raising over $5 million last year. Individual bikers maintain personal relationships with community members. Tank, Dr. Williams, married a local teacher who volunteers at the medical clinic. Pops, fully recovered from his heart episode, moved to Cleveland to be closer to the center. He runs a motorcycle safety program for teenagers. James Phoenix bought a house 3 blocks away. Dorothy reminds me why I do this work, he explains. Unexpected developments continue emerging. Dorothy's granddaughter changed her major from business to social work, inspired by her grandmother's example. 3 major corporations launched similar community partnerships after studying Dorothy's success. Property values are rising, but affordable housing remains protected through Dorothy's advocacy and legal expertise she gained in training. The emergency fund jar that once held $23.47 has been replaced by a community emergency fund worth $50,000. Dorothy's personal savings account grows monthly for the first time in decades. Awards and recognition accumulate. Presidential Volunteer Service Award, State Recognition for Community Development, Phoenix Industries, Humanitarian of the Year, Community College Honorary Degree. But Dorothy's favorite recognition comes from neighborhood children who still call her Grammy Dot and stop by for homework help, knowing she'll always have time for them. Sometimes I wake up thinking I'm still dreaming, Dorothy reflects. But then I see families having hope again, and I know the Lord had a plan all along. 1 year later, on the anniversary of that stormy night, the tradition began. October 15th, another severe weather warning, another evening of dark clouds and threatening skies. But this time, Dorothy isn't watching from a struggling household. She's coordinating emergency response from the community center. "All right, everyone," Dorothy announces to her staff. "The weather service says we might get severe storms tonight. Let's open the center as an emergency shelter." As rain begins to fall, Dorothy notices familiar headlights in the community center parking lot. Not just any headlights, motorcycle headlights. A smile spreads across her face. James Phoenix and his crew arrive, but they're not seeking shelter this time. They're checking on their investment, their friend, their inspiration. "Y'all come in here before you get soaked," Dorothy calls out, using the exact same words from that night a year ago. Same warmth, same welcoming spirit. But now she's greeting them into a space they helped create. What Dorothy doesn't know is that this has become an annual pilgrimage for the motorcycle club. Every October 15th, they return to remember the night that changed everything. This year, they've brought guests, community leaders from the 4 other cities where Phoenix Industries has started programs, young veterans learning about community service. Dorothy's granddaughter, now a social work student doing her internship at the center. Local government officials document the program's success for replication in other states. Despite her transformed circumstances, Dorothy still insists on personally serving coffee and snacks to everyone. Her heart hasn't changed, only her capacity to help others. Frank Morrison, now 72 and healthy, approaches with obvious emotion. "Miss Dorothy, you didn't just save my life that night. You gave me purpose. I volunteer here twice a week now, and it's the best part of my week." "And you still won't take payment for it," Dorothy laughs, referencing their ongoing joke. The next generation has joined the tradition. Local children who benefited from Dorothy's programs now volunteer to help serve the visiting bikers. Malik is home from college, helping coordinate the anniversary event. "You know what I learned that night?" James reflects, sitting in the same chair where Frank recovered a year ago. "That real success isn't measured by how much money you make. It's measured by how many lives you touch." Dorothy pours his coffee, still using mismatched mugs because she likes them. "Mr. Phoenix, I learned something too. The Lord gives us storms not to tear us down, but to show us who we really are when the winds get rough." As the anniversary evening winds down, Dorothy mentions a new family that just moved into the neighborhood. Single mother with 3 children, struggling to find work, proud but in need of community support. "Point us in their direction," James says immediately. The tradition continues. Dorothy's approach to helping others hasn't changed. She still notices who needs help. still opens doors without asking questions, still shares what she has with whoever needs it. But now she has an army of resources behind her. Every act of kindness has the potential to transform lives. The final image. Dorothy standing in the doorway of the community center, watching the bikers ride safely into the night, knowing they'll return when needed, knowing the community is stronger, knowing that kindness is still the most powerful force in the world. Above the doorway, a plaque reads, "Kindness lives here. It always has." Dorothy's final message echoes from her office at the community center. Folks always ask me, "Dorothy, how did you know those men were worth helping?" Truth is, I didn't, but I knew I was worth being the kind of person who helps when help is needed. She pauses, looking at the photo on her desk. 8 bikers and 1 grandmother, all smiling on opening day. We all got storms in our lives. We all got folks on our porches looking for shelter. The question isn't whether they deserve our kindness. The question is whether we deserve to be people who give it. Your act of kindness might not bring 100 motorcycles to your door, but it might bring hope to someone who desperately needs it. And sometimes that's worth more than all the money in the world. If Dorothy's story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to believe in the power of kindness. Hit that like button if you believe small acts can create big changes. Subscribe for more stories that prove goodness still wins.